My best friend used to hate my husband because he would get in between our friendship often. Now that I'm a stay-at-home mom, she's trying really hard to get in between his legs. My husband, let's call him James, 26M, and I, 26F, have been together since our early teens, and we got married last year and have a 6-month-old daughter together. She is the light of both our lives as we both came from broken homes and are trying to live a better life than we grew up in. My best friend, let's call her Carla, 23F, came into the picture a few years later. We used to live in the same neighborhood and casually started to hang out together. She lives with both her parents and siblings as she is studying to get her bachelor's degree. At first, she didn't like James. She said that he was clingy and tried to insert himself into our friendship too much. Well, he is my husband, so I would hope that he wanted to be friends with my friends. Anyway, she was civil to him despite how he acted because he was my romantic partner. For context, James is on the spectrum, has BP type 2 and PTSD, and it causes him to be a little socially awkward and miss certain social cues and taboos. I love him regardless of it all. Over the last few years, we have been hanging out a lot more. She comes over for a few drinks, we go to movies, and even visit local attractions together. We all three have a good time, and my husband does try to make nights for just the two of us often too. However, last year James and I found out we were expecting a child together in January. At the time, I was working at a fast food place and started to feel nauseous. I threw up and immediately went to the doctor. Come to find out, I was 8.5 weeks pregnant. My life changed, and I had become busier preparing for motherhood. Carla saw me less and less, and we couldn't talk as much. James and I got married almost a month and a half after discovering we were going to become parents. That's when our dynamic changed. Lately, I've been trying my best to juggle being a stay-at-home mom while taking online courses for college, so I've been super busy. One day, James gets a text, and it's from Carla. She asks if they can talk, as she was upset. He took the phone call despite me protesting, and a few minutes later said, "Hey, we need to go get Carla. Her father is picking a fight with her." I got upset as we were watching a movie together, and I had just gotten the baby down for bed. We go to her house, which is about 20 minutes away, and she stays with us for a night. As I get our daughter back down to bed, Carla asks to cuddle with the two of us in our bed. I was hesitant. I have issues with claustrophobia due to a traumatic experience as a child, but James gave the go-ahead, and we settled in for the night. Carla's dad called to apologize, and she went back home. Once she was gone, I blew up at James. What he did was not only inappropriate but also disrespectful to my boundaries. Ever since, when she has an issue with her dad, she calls James and vents. One day, while my in-laws were staying with us, my mother-in-law overheard a conversation with James and Carla. She was concerned and asked me if I was okay with it. I said, "No, not really," but every time I bring it up, he gets defensive, saying that she needs help, that she is going through a hard time, blah blah blah. It is important to note that my mother-in-law was cheated on in the past by her ex, my husband's father. We are also extremely close, and she sees me as a daughter. She hates cheaters with a passion, and my husband was using the same excuses his father did. She asked to speak to him privately and walked to our living room. They got into a heated argument, and James apologized to me. He said he didn't know that it was hurting me and causing issues in our marriage. I asked him, how would he feel if I had asked him if another man could sleep in the bed with us? He kind of deflated and tried to say, "It's different, blah blah blah." His stepfather spoke up and said, "It is the same, you're uncomfortable with it and so is she, so quit with the excuses." James respects his stepfather quite a lot since he raised him since he was 8, and his own father was in and out of the picture. Once the dust settled, my husband truly apologized to me for his actions and said that he would do better. I kissed him, and that was that. However, I wouldn't be right here if that was the end of the issues. Lately, Carla has been calling him 3 to 8 times a day. She says it's because she is bored and has no one else to talk to. I snapped, and I called him out over the nonchalance about the situation, how when she calls, he answers, how it is making me feel like a third wheel in my marriage, etc. He just says, "She's just lonely. You're letting it get to you." That night, I slept in the living room. I'm starting to suspect that she is trying to monopolize his time. She calls him for over an hour each time she calls, they talk, she complains about her life, etc., almost like she is his girlfriend or something. I'm starting to find this relationship troubling, and it's getting to the point that it is affecting my marriage. Where do I go from here? Update 1. So, some things have happened, and everything about this situation sucks. I don't know if I will be okay for some time, but the baby and I are currently staying with my friend. To start, James and I are getting a divorce, and Carla is no longer a friend to me or our mutuals. The betrayal is too deep for her to be friends with our group. As most of you assumed, James and Carla are indeed having an affair. It started about 3 months ago and just turned physical last month. They were planning on just up and leaving after James served me divorce papers. They used the ruse that he was helping her through emotional issues to hide the fact. I was crushed. She wanted to clear the air before it got worse, and that was when she let wind that James was going to try to get me to terminate my rights to my child in order for Carla to adopt her. Their reasoning is because of my borderline diagnosis a few years ago that supposedly makes me unfit to be a mother, and he was sure that the courts would agree. She then handed me 2 separate stacks of paperwork and left. I am contacting a lawyer as I am writing this. I am seriously hurt. You guys were right. Carla was a snake and only told me this so she wouldn't feel guilty. However, I am not letting my soon-to-be ex-husband bully me into termination of my rights. I called him afterward and got very heated about what was going on. James just sat there in silence. I was crying afterward, and I pleaded with him to tell me what I did wrong. He said I wasn't putting out like a good wife should, and I wasn't able to give him a big family, so it's all my fault. For context, I had a near-fatal complication with the delivery of our daughter, where I bled throughout the entire labor. I had to have 2 blood transfusions and haven't fully recovered from it. I was not cleared for any strenuous activity for 3 months, including bedroom intimacy. James was getting unsatisfied with all my doctor's appointments and not getting the bedroom fun that he wanted. Meanwhile, I was hurting and ended up needing another procedure to remove some placenta that didn't naturally come out. I even had to have my tubes tied because if I have another child, I won't make it. James wanted at least 2 more kids, so this put an end to his plans. I thought I knew him, but he's a complete monster. We were together since we were 15, and this is how he repays me. I am absolutely heartbroken. I'm going to step back and take some time to adjust. There is no chance for a healthy co-parenting situation. I'm fighting for primary custody with supervised visits. Carla will not have any access to the baby, as I will ask the judge to make a clause preventing her from interacting with my daughter. Thank you everyone for the advice.
So this guy had it all: money, success, the works, but he just couldn't resist temptation. One bad decision after another, and boom, his empire came crashing down. Now he's divorced, probably wondering where it all went wrong. I mean, come on, dude, was it really worth it? Let this be a lesson to all of us. Your choices can make or break you. No sympathy from me, though. He dug his own grave. What do you think? Would you risk it all for a moment of pleasure? Drop your thoughts below and let's discuss.
What's the most disrespectful experience you've ever had as a guest? I once attended a housewarming party hosted by a friend of a friend who had just bought a new house with her newlywed husband. I was the only man at the housewarming party other than the hostess's husband and my friend, a female whom I had known for years since high school. I arrived in time to meet about 20 of the women who had come to meet the hostess and her husband and see her new luxury home, which he designed and helped build since he was an architect who specialized in ecologically friendly homes and modern buildings. I arrived with some gifts. A box of some luxurious chocolate hazelnut cake, and a brand new bread maker machine which the hostess really wanted. I was then directed to put the boxes in the kitchen and then proceeded to the living room where everyone was gathered for introductions and helping themselves to non-alcoholic drinks, while the food was being placed on serving plates and brought to the living room. My friend introduced me to the hostess, Kira. I offered my hand to shake. She ignored me at first, while some of the women guests interrupted to compliment her on her new home and another asked her about where she bought her couch set or something along those lines. I spoke up to introduce myself and say my name and she looked at me sideways with her eyes and said, "Just wait your turn." She continued to talk to one of her female guests and laughed, while still ignoring my hand and me. Without even being introduced or shaking hands with Kira, my friend and I just walked over to our spot in the living room while she apologized for her, saying that she's probably been very busy setting up her new home and she'll have time to talk to everyone later on. After a few minutes of chatting, Kira's husband, a very nice and quiet shy man, tapped his glass with a spoon like a bell to get started. We all bowed our heads together in prayer and blessed the housewarming party and all who came and brought gifts. Then Kira started her speeches and announcements and each guest had a chance to introduce herself and say one interesting fact about herself. When it came to my turn, Kira interrupted me and said, "We all know who you are, so let's move on to the next guest." She introduced herself before I could even finish saying my name. I stood there speechless but just smiled, not knowing what to say. My friend who brought me just held my hand and smiled at me as if to calm me from being angry. After introductions, Kira offered a tour of her new home and we all followed her from room to room, admiring all the decorations and evening complimenting her on all the amazing ecological things she pointed out, like the triple layered windows that allowed the sun to heat up rooms and 1-inch floor tiles that were made with recycled materials that helped to retain heat, as well as her heating vents that allowed heat from her clothes dryer to be directed to other rooms and items like that. I asked some questions about various items out of curiosity and how they were ecological, and my questions were completely ignored by Kira, who clearly was bothered by my questions or perhaps hearing my voice. When I asked about what certain switches were for and other details, Kira politely reprimanded me, saying, "Don't touch anything," which she repeated again when she showed her gray water recycling system for the toilets and for use in their garden and greenhouse room that held many plants and had an indoor bed of vegetables growing under a large slanted window which made up much of that room's wall that allowed sunlight in. Kira's husband quietly told me about what some of the switches were for, and I was impressed by the ecological alternatives and money and energy saving benefits with everything in the house. Finally, it came to serving all the treats and food that we brought, and gifts were opened, and many of the women awed and ummed when my sinful chocolate cake with hazelnut cream was placed on the dining room table near the living room, and as gifts were being shown, some of the women complimented on the new bread maker machine and said how they wanted to buy one. I knew that Kira liked to bake things and bring them to church sales and fundraising events. When my friend who brought me mentioned that I brought the bread maker, Kira snapped with a laugh. Only a man would bring such a sexist gift. Not all women are destined to stay in the kitchen. I didn't hear any thank yous, and Kira's husband spoke up and said how he loved all the varieties of bread that his own mom used to make and how she'd add nuts, raisins or berries and even add coffee or tea to make wonderful flavors of bread. I simply ignored the insult and tried hard to not say anything since I was in her house and I didn't feel it was my place to defend myself or argue. As a gentleman, I let all the ladies be served first, whether it was cake or salad or chicken wings. When I was finally served, I was really impressed with some black and spicy chicken on skewers which I thought were really delicious. And when I asked who made these and what was put into the recipe, the hostess snapped so rudely, "If you don't like it you can leave, we didn't make this food just to feed you." I nearly choked and I tried to speak up about how much I liked the chicken skewers, wanting to get the recipe so that I can make them at home. She interrupted me before I had the chance to respond, snapping, "Be quiet or leave." I was speechless and I started to fight back tears. Kira's husband quietly walked over and started to rub my shoulders and told me I loved the chocolate cake that you brought over. I then grabbed the bread maker still in the box unopened and I headed for the front door where my jacket was in the front closet. Kira yelled at me saying, "Put that back, it's not yours to take." I then turned around and yelled back, "Yes it is, I bought it and there's no way in hell I'm spending $250 in taxes on an appliance for someone who has been so rude to me," and I grabbed my jacket with my friend following me as she apologized and tried to calm me down as we headed for the door with Kira following me. As walked out and down the pathway to the sidewalk, the hostess yelled, "Don't you ever come back here again, you're not welcome in my home." I just turned and yelled back, "Fuck you and your home. I don't know how you managed to get such a nice man to marry a vile jerk like you, but I hope he gets to keep this house when he finally divorces you." And then I left with my friend who was on the verge of tears. I stopped attending the church we shared on Sunday but did keep in touch with my friend. I didn't know angry words were a prophecy of what was to come. Kira's husband divorced the jerk after 1 year of marriage on grounds that she was abusive and at times nearly violent, and she also had an affair with one of his co-workers who had been to his home on many occasions. The husband kept the house he designed and he wasn't required to pay any alimony to his ex-wife either. I hadn't kept in touch with him but saw the architect years later in a shopping mall with a beautiful pregnant wife and his 2 kids, and he was happy to see me again. I later learned from my friend that the ex-wife was divorced a second time and she had been charged and tossed in jail for a few months for domestic violence and felony abuse. She now works as a waitress in some hotel and has lost the right to see her only daughter. So, I guess it pays to be nice, and mean people lose a lot more in the end.
Okay, spill the tea. Picture this. A party full of women, a cold shoulder, and a cryptic, "We all know who you are. What's the deal? Did our guy accidentally crash an all-girls night? Or is he the center of some juicy drama? Maybe he's the ex of every woman there. Or, plot twist, he's the local pizza delivery guy who's seen too much. But seriously, what did this dude do? Is he the town's most notorious heartbreaker, a secret agent, or just a really confused party crasher? I am so confused. Drop your opinions in the comments because I'm losing sleep over this.